auditorium. We're ready for Mr. Stephen Bassett.
Back up there.
Final presentation of the day.
Right here.
I know, it goes by so quick, eh, Cookie? You having a good time? How many people in the audience sitting here have had their own experience with UFO sighting or paranormal experience? Wow, look at this. That's right. We've been finding this all over. Go to Montreal, you should have seen the same thing. But let's get started with Stephen as people are coming back in. Stephen Bassett, as I'm sure you know, is the founder of Paradigm Research Group. And the man's a warrior. I think he's a warrior. He's someone that has a lot of fortitude, dedication, courage, discipline, and that's what it takes to take on the system, to create awareness. And he's doing very, very important work. He's created more awareness in this group than you can imagine around the world with this subject, bringing credibility, bringing forward the witnesses that have the evidence, the testimony that matters. And so my hat is totally off to him. We saw him do his presentation in Montreal. He literally blew the audience away. He blew me away, and I've seen everything he's done. So we're really honored to have him here in Canada. So let's give him a nice warm welcome here. Stephen Bassett.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Pass that microphone. It's not going to interfere. Okay. You got me on?
You're on.
We got people coming in, so I'll take a bit of time. I want to thank, obviously, Chris Russick and David Whitehead for creating a whole new franchise of information conduit here in Canada. What can I say? Not quite sure anybody in the U.S. has quite done it this way. It's okay to have that on. I don't mind. And this tour emerged earlier this year when he gave me a call, and we thought, this is the time to put this together. All right? So I'm very glad to be here. This is my 4th or 5th time to Canada. We'll be talking about your nation today a little bit. I think you'll like it. We'll be talking about a bunch of other stuff you're not going to like. Okay? In fact, I intend to make you fairly uncomfortable. It's okay. Being uncomfortable is not a bad thing. In fact, being uncomfortable is essential to your survival. We'll be doing that. And with that in mind, how many of you have figured out what this is about on the screen here? This is an absolutely ingenious video. It was created back in 2003. And what this is a record of all the nuclear explosions since 1945 around the world, by country, by intensity, by location. And as you see at this point, we're up to, U.S. has done, where's the thingy? Here it is. The U.S. has done 372, and it's going month by month. We're up to 1964. That's Russia's done 230 of these explosions. We got 25 for Britain, 13 for France. And this goes on for about another, 10 minutes, right? And they just mount up. And they mount up until eventually it hits 2056, right? Nuclear explosions. And then at the end, it goes back and recapitulates them and shows you where they all occurred by country, right? And so like Russia will have, something like 800 scattered all around Russia, and then the U.S. has got a number scattered here, and then a huge mass right there. And so in the very end, it shows this huge white circle, which represents most of the 1,065 that we did. All right? It's very impressive. Now, why am I starting off my presentation today by showing you this? There's a reason. There's a meme going around in the United States, certainly, I don't know about Canada, that governments don't matter anymore. They don't need them. They're a problem, they're a pain, they get in the way. We're just going to go around them. We ignore them. We're not going to vote, it's a waste of time, all the parties are the same, etc., etc. Well, that's not the way the world works. There's 196 countries and independent states in this world with 196 social contracts. And those social contracts serve all 7 billion people on this planet. And so If you want to make things better, you do it by not getting rid of government. You do it by making government better. You do it by reforming the social contracts, not abandoning them. In other words, what we need is an age of reform. And so what does this mean? Well, the governments of these 9 nations decided that between 1945 and the year 1995, they would set off 2,056 nuclear explosions in service to their government agenda to have a massive nuclear defense to ward off enemies of the state. Regardless of the impact it was going to have on the environment, it was just something they had to do. Now, this is at the center of almost everything we're going to be talking about one way or another. All right? And they chose to do it, and they did it. And if government chooses to have a war, it will send your kids to that war to die. So if governments don't matter, how come they can do things like this and start wars? Because they do matter. And so you don't run from them, you engage them. You don't withdraw, you vote. You are called to action. Because I am not a researcher. I don't have some tidbit of research for you that I dug up in a book somewhere. I'm not a contactee or and I had a sighting. I haven't had that privilege. I'm not a witness, one of the government agency political witnesses, work for the government. I am an activist. My job is action. And the goal is to change government policy, just like every activist movement in the history of the 20th century. And you know most of them. We don't have to go over. You know what they are. You know the things they accomplished. You know the changes that were made. And so this is about changing government policy. And so in order to do that, you have to deal with real politique, or in our circles, real exopolitique, right? And you must get something done. Otherwise, it is a waste of time, and things will not get better. So when you get a chance, you can go online and you can watch this whole thing. I'm going to move on from it right now. Second. All right, do that, move on. Hello. Come on down. Oh, I see. Wait a minute, I got to go back over. There we go. My organization is Paradigm Research Group. It was formed in 1996. It is a political activist organization. I'm a registered lobbyist. Its role is to change the government policy regarding the extraterrestrial presence issue. If you want to get my updates, it's prg@paradigmresearchgroup.org. Just subscribe, and you'll get them. Okay? Now, just to follow up on that, again, this whole thing about what governments do matter and have to engage, I want to show you a little something. Okay, this is kind of interesting. This is a chart of death rates by certain major diseases since 1900 to 2011. All right? Now, if you look at tuberculosis, and by the way, a lot of money has been spent on trying to deal with these diseases and mitigate their impact. If you look at tuberculosis, you'll see that there was 194 per 100,000 in 1900, and then eventually, through a lot of work and effort, we got it down to 0.2. Not bad. How about this one? Major cardiovascular diseases. That's heart attacks. Always high, peaked around 521 in 1960. A lot of smoking going on back then. And then it sort of tapered off, and now we've got it to half of that. 249.8. Not bad at all. And influenza, pneumonia, killed millions. 202 at the beginning of the century, peaked at 207. Now down to 17 deaths per 100,000. And then we've got motor vehicle accidents. They're kind of consistent. Not a whole lot, right? But it's getting better thanks to better safety in vehicles. Now let's look at this one. This is death by cancer. Interesting, isn't it? Do you know that no other disease has had more money spent on it than cancer? Vast, untold billions of dollars have been spent to blunt this disease and prevent you from dying from it. And in 1900, 64 per 100,000 were dying. And then up to 1940, it increased about 56 more. Not bad, but not ideal. But then starting in 1940, here's what happens. It goes up another 80 to 2,000 in spite of all the billions of dollars that were spent to deal with this disease. And that period exactly corresponds to the 2046 nuclear explosions that occurred all around the world, though not in Canada. You were very wise on this. And so you better believe that the cancer epidemic is significantly connected to the fact that we decided to explode those weapons and spread radioactivity into the air, into the water, into the groundwater. Okay, now that you're in a happy, mellow mood, let me move on here. Very quickly, here's the backstory. You already know this. I'm just giving you this kind of to create atmosphere. Very simple. Here it is. We dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan in August 1945, right? Did some damage. On March the 5th of 1946 at Westminster College, that is the famous speech by Winston Churchill in which he basically announces the Cold War by stating that there is an iron curtain across Europe. On June the 25th, just a couple months later, is when Kenneth Arnold has his sighting, the most famous of the sightings of the early 1947. Huge number of sightings exploded in early 1947, marking a milestone in the change of the engagement by the extraterrestrial presence in the human race. Only 10 days after that, there were crash vehicles in New Mexico, right? They were not saucers. They were aerodynamic chevron craft, piloted by entities probably not as sophisticated as the ones that are common now. And they shortly exited the scene as things started to escalate in terms of that engagement. That's one of the reasons they may have crashed is because they weren't as sophisticated. We got the bodies, we got the craft, and of course there was the famous announcement July the 8th in the newspaper that could have ended the, or essentially announced the extraterrestrial presence in 1947, which would have been very interesting. Love to see how that would have worked out. But 8 hours later, they held another press conference, and the next day's newspaper emptied the saucer. And the informal truth embargo had begun. Then, January 17, 1961, is Eisenhower's very famous speech in which he warns everybody, including you Canadians, to beware of the military-industrial complex. And nobody could figure out what the hell he was talking about. Because at the time, the military was held in high esteem. It had defeated the Nazis. It was defending the world against the Soviets. It was the bulwark against evil. And our corporations were doing fantastic. They had brought the economy back in the United States. This is the era of marketing. America's economic power was growing. And then the president, on his way out, the last thing he does is say, beware of the military intelligence complex. Is it possible that President Eisenhower knew something that the rest of the people didn't know? Is it possible that he couldn't actually give you the details? He could just give you the warning. And then just a couple of months later is when John Kennedy makes an extremely, one of the most important speeches by any president at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel to the American Newspaper Publishers Association on secrecy. I encourage you to go on YouTube and listen to this speech. It is phenomenal. It reminds you of what a president can do if they've got what it takes, the right stuff. And of course, he makes this famous statement. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we as a people are inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. Inherently. That doesn't mean actively, but inherently. And then, in 1988, these words were spoken. It's about, 17 years later. We live in a dirty and dangerous world. There are some things the general public does not need to know and shouldn't. I believe democracy flourishes when the government can take legitimate steps to keep its secrets and when the press can decide whether to print what it knows. What in the hell is this person talking about? And who is this person? Some wild-eyed right-winger, right? Some ideologue that commanded a brief stage. No, actually it was the publisher of the Washington Post, Katharine Graham, whose family ran that Post forever, and I can assure you the Washington Post has been hip deep in the ET truth embargo from day one, and as the nation's major political paper has played an extremely important role in keeping the whole thing in line. And there's so many examples of this, I wouldn't want to bore you with them, but if you dig, you'll find them. The Post, which has covered this issue and had the occasional article, when you look at the total coverage, has been the most egregious of all the media. because of its assigned role. If we wanted an Avestia or a Pravda, well, we could have gone communist back in 26, and then we could have had that. But that's not what we wanted. So why in the hell were we getting something like that in 1988? And by the way, where did she make this speech discussing the essence of how newspapers should operate? Well, of course she made it at the CIA. What the hell she's doing at the CIA, I cannot imagine. But there she was. And then, of course, the secret empire, right? Throughout that period, right up until today, the greatest secret empire in all of history was brought together. Soviets had their version, Russia has its version, China has its version. The UK is pretty good at it on a smaller scale. Mossad, very good on a very small scale. But nothing like what the US created. Unbelievably vast, unbelievably well-financed. Millions of people, millions of documents, everything's classified, underground facilities, secret labs, ASAP programs, unacknowledged, you name it, covert operations, deep black, and on and on and on and on and on. Plus the ability to surveil every communication in the world. Right? What died? No, it didn't. It's all right.
No?
No, it just stopped moving. Secret empire.
Mike.
Oh, my mic died.
Yeah.
All right, let's check this out. Is this a battery thing? Let's find out.
You just use this.
So it must be a battery. Okay.
fix
We go to the handheld. Got to do my Madonna thing now. Look. I was born in 1946. Actually, I was conceived in February of 1946, right? It's a little more intimate. Because exact dates like that are not known, we don't have conception days, we have birthdays. I kind of think a conception day would be cooler, frankly. We're going to need better technology for that. Conceived in February. My father served in the Pacific. He was at Guadalcanal, and so he didn't get mustered out of the Pacific until the bombs were dropped on Japan. And it took a while, right? They had, well, there were a lot of troops over there. And they mustered them out through Australia, almost all of them. Right? And they had a problem, because the troops would go to Australia and they'd hang out, and when it came time to go back to the U.S., most of them said, no, I think we like it here. I think we'll just stay here. Right? But they had to leave. And so they came back to the U.S. And then my father was immediately signed to Bethesda, where he immediately met my wife and immediately conceived me. No, his wife. My mother. Kind of hope the NSA doesn't pick up on that. It may get used against me. You know, I did go to Sweden once. I'm wondering if those two Swedish women are going to start talking about me, you know, and I'll end up in the Ecuadorian embassy with Julian Assange. We can play chess to pass the time. And so I am a nuclear child. If the bombs get dropped a day earlier, a day later, or they don't get dropped, I'm not here. Right? I'm not here. It's an interesting connection, isn't it? But you know what it means? It means that I have lived, like many of you, and a few even longer than that, but not so many. I have lived every single day of my life with 4, I hope I can get all 4, threads operating at the same time. One of those threads was the threat of nuclear war. Lived under it every day of my life, and I still live under it, folks. Trust me, it isn't over yet. I've lived every day of my life under the modern era of the extraterrestrial presence. Ongoing since 47, hadn't stopped, raging right along. I've also lived every day of my life under a truth embargo imposed by the United States government on acknowledgement of this presence. And when I say a truth embargo, I mean a serious embargo. A lot of money spent, all kinds of stuff, disinformation, misinformation, threats, you know, intimidation, manipulation of the media. I mean, they really went at it. And you can sort of see it if you look at the history. Lived my whole life under that. And finally, I lived my entire life while the vast world of the intelligence world, the secret world, was built up. I've watched all 4 of these things in parallel my entire life, and it's still going on. Now, with that in mind, let's talk about Canada. Okay? Canada is a really cool country. I mean, you have got it made. I'm sorry. I know some of you are upset, and you get angry at this, and you get angry at that, and you got the bad politician. But just as someone that's been around, let me tell you, you have got it made. All right? Let's see. You've got 3 oceans on 3 of your borders, really cold oceans. Very cold oceans. And then on your bottom border, you've got one of the most developed nations in the United States, and other than the fact we invaded you in the Revolutionary War, 5 times in the War of 1812, and once in the movie South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut, overall we get along very well. And you're feeling pretty good about that. And there's a whole big country between you and another border that deals with less developed countries all the way down to the end of South America. And so you got that. But that's not all. Of all of the major nations, and I mean all the major nations, you have the second highest amount of land per person. The only other nation that has more is Australia. And a lot of that is in the outback. It's really not so good. That's really cool. That's a lot of space. You also have the second highest amount of fresh water per person in the world, only after Australia. I mean, you got some great water. Fresh water. And pretty soon, water is going to be more valuable than gold. But what else? Let's look a little bit more at Canada. Let's see what we got here. Oh, by the way, before we do that, I want to mention this. You see this phrase? Interestingly enough, in my entire life, I had never read this phrase until I wrote it down on the slide. Never read it. I'd never heard it before. And I'm pretty sure very few in this room have really ever heard it before. It just isn't part of your culture. Yet, I'm about to show you how exceptional you are. All right? Let's talk about this. This is a large quality of life schematic that is done by an organization that brings together a whole bunch of data from multiple sources and created what we call a quality of life index. Okay? Let me go over here. See how we're doing here. Okay? Let's talk about health. All right. Over all of the major nations, Canada comes in 6th. All right. France, Australia, Japan, Iceland, and Singapore ahead of you. Some of those are pretty small. That's a pretty good rating, folks. The United States, well, it's struggling, and it's coming in 39th, actually. How about education? Canada is 3rd. Victor Vigiani is, of course, a significant reason for that. Okay. The United States is 22nd. How about wealth? Now, wealth can be done in a lot of different ways, but when you factor in many factors of wealth other than just GDP, you get a more accurate assessment, and in wealth, Canada comes in 15th, ahead of the United States in 20th. Right? And I think that pretty much reflects it. And then democracy. All right, democracy. Canada and the U.S. come in pretty close together there. I'm not surprised at that. All right, if you look at the 2 institutions and so forth. But, you know, 15th and 17th, both of us could do better there. But still, hanging in with the U.S. on that. And then peace. Peace. Now, Canada comes in 14th here. And it would be a lot higher, except in the last 10 years, you sort of took a turn away from peace. And that's what dropped you down, okay? But have no fear. Don't worry. The United States is off the chart in 81st. And let's talk about environment. Canada is in here in 40th. And that has a lot to do with fossil fuel stuff. You need to work on this. But the United States is in 52nd. And so overall, here we have Canada on across the board, all dimensions, 10th in the world in terms of your social contract. United States, 31st. Okay? So let's go on very quickly. Let's talk about this. More indexes. All right, what do we have here? We are income inequality, unemployment rate, level of democracy, well-being index, right? That's an IMF index, very important. Life expectancy, prison population, and student performance, right? And I forget the total number of countries. It's about 100 and whatever. No. It was just these countries on this one, yes. Just these countries. These are considered advanced countries economically. And Canada is there too. and the United States is at the bottom. Okay? What's going on here? Let's do a stronger comparison. As you can see by this chart, dark purple, worst of the worst, reddish purple, worst, and whatever the hell color that is, best. All right? So here we are, Canada. And gray means kind of in the middle, average. Canada, in terms of income inequality, is in the middle, about 32. The United States is worst of the worst. Unemployment, Canada's at 8. We're worst of the worst at 9. All right, at the time of this chart. There have been some changes there, but they've been relative. In level of democracy, Canada, best of the best, 9.08. United States, kind of in the middle. Global Well-Being Index, percentage thriving. Canada, best of the best. United States in the middle at 57. Food insecurity, I love this one. Have you been at times in the past 12 months when you did not have enough money to buy food? Canada in the middle. United States, worst of the worst. Life expectancy, Canada, 81.29, 78.24 for the United States. If a woman in this audience will marry me, I get 3 years out of that, okay? I'm looking. That's all you need to know. Prison population, Canada has 117 per 100,000. The United States has 6 times that. This is per capita. We are 6 times more criminal than you are. Clearly, obviously, that must be what's going on. We are really mean dudes down there. Don't screw with us, all right? Okay? Or you won't get put in prison. I think. I'm not sure. But in any event, math scores, best of the best in both math and science. We're worst of the worst and in the middle. I'm seeing a pattern developing here. What do you think? How about health expenditures? We spend 80% more than Canada, all right? That's 80% more? Yeah, it's about 75% more than Canada. That's a whole bunch of money that you have, and we spend more than any other country. And what do we get for that mass expenditure? Well, I got your infant mortality rates. Canada is right here, I believe. Where is it? It's up here. There it is. Okay, wait a minute. Where's my light? Here it is. Oh, I'm already losing my battery. What a shame. Anyway, it's right here. You need to work on this, folks. You're at 4.78. You can do better than this. However, the United States is 50% higher at 6.17 in spite of all of that spending. What do we got here? This is the percentage of total population, body mass index. This is not good. Not good at all. Now, you guys have been allowing our franchise restaurants up here. I'm telling you, sitting at 13.1, but don't be afraid because we are the most obese nation, and I don't got no flasher anymore. We are the most obese nation in the world, and we have the highest diabetes rate in the world, okay? Twice yours, okay? And we spend all that money. Okay, I've already been there. Let's keep going. However, there are some areas where we lead the world. United States. Gun-related murders. Okay, I think we're 6 times Canada. Homicides per 100,000 by guns. That's another chart. Shows it a little differently. 6 times Canada. Japan looks really attractive right now. You know, I'm kind of looking at that. Now, total murder rates. That's by any means, right? Plastic forks, right? Smothering somebody with a pie, whatever. We're behind Poland. I do not know what the hell is going on in Poland. But Canada, we're still like 3 times Canada. And then, of course, let's get down to the heavy stuff. We, of course, have more nuclear weapons than anyone in the world. Russia is slightly behind us, and half of those nukes, the 4,600 nukes, are under SALT treaty, meaning they're contained. But the other half, about 2,500, are not contained and we can do anything with them we want, and that is the same for Russia. And that is why the nuclear war scenario isn't over yet, folks. But it's even worse than it was during the Cold War, which I will explain later. Defense spending. This is a 2009 chart. It's modified a little bit because our economy went to hell. But as of 2009, a milestone was reached, which may have been the first in all of history, though I'm not sure. In 2009, the United States spent more money, $640 billion, and that doesn't count all the black stuff we don't know about, we still don't know those numbers. They're pretty big. But let's just go with the white numbers above ground. More money on our defense and military than all of the rest of the nations combined in the world. Okay? And if you'll look at Russia, our arch enemy, the great villain, the country that eventually going to take, they got Crimea. They're coming for Iceland next, you know that. Whatever. They spent $17 billion. We spent $640 billion. Now, why would anybody be intimidated by the United States? I mean, we're just taking care of ourselves. We're just keeping safe. That's all. Don't be concerned. We would never use our weapons against you unless we were threatened directly. Right? So it's okay. No problem. Right? Serial killers. We really lead the world in serial killers. Now this is the recorded going all the way back to, I forget where. It's pretty much all the way back to records. That's a total number, 2,300. Canada's got 60. Okay? All right? You probably could reduce that, but have no fear. We are the leader. And in case you're thinking it's because we're a large country, there is the per capita serial killers per million people. We are, I forget, 3.5 times Canada. So we got that down. Which brings me to this. Okay? In the United States, the term American exceptionalism is rampant. If you do not buy into it, if you do not talk about it as a candidate, if you don't write about it, or if you deny it, you are an apostate. You can't win your election. If you are not prepared to state publicly in front of an audience, right, with a microphone, that America is exceptional above all nations, then you are not worthy of public office. You're not worthy of being listened to. American exceptionalism has become, rather than an ideology, it has become a disease. Why? First of all, it destroys your eyes. Without your eyes, or diseased eyes, you're unable to see other options. You're unable to see what other nations can do, better opportunities, better ways to go, because you're already perfect. It destroys your ears. You can't hear the voices of others, maybe even in your own country, the opposition, or other nations that are saying, we got things pretty good here. Look what we're doing. Right? And then it eats your brain. And once you have that disease, once you believe you are exceptional above all nations, then anybody that is better is a threat. And, well, you've spent $600 billion. You can certainly deal with that. And let me say that it's worse than that, because what is happening, and this has been going on since 1964 in the United States, is while the ideology of American exceptionalism has increased, the social contract of the United States has decreased. And so now you have a growing gap between the reality and the myth. And people are getting unhappy. And to put it another way, south of the border, things are not going well. Oh, you may look good in some respects. The baseballs and football leagues are doing pretty well, and the very rich are doing extremely well. But underneath that is some major, major problems going on that could lead to rather serious consequences for you. Which brings me to this chart. This chart is the border between the United States and its neighbor, Mexico. That border is 1,954 miles long, of which 1,000 miles are fenced. And the rest is got helicopters and gunships and God knows what's going on, flying around. You've got vigilantes, you've got Border Patrol, National Guard, whatever, and we're doing our best there. But it's tough. It's estimated that 30,000 more children will be coming over from Central America. They're getting in trains and coming in, 30,000 children. We have a massive immigration policy that emerges from decades of really terrible immigration policy, immigration problem, which from decades of immigration policy. But, one day we'll deal with it. It's okay. We're in no hurry. We are exceptional, so there's no real need to get carried away. Let's talk about this border. This border is 5,525 miles long, and not any of it is fenced. Keep that in mind. All right? So you're saying, okay, Steve, you got, there's problems down there, I understand. And I think you're implying that those problems could become a problem for us. What kind of da? Can you be maybe more specific? Can you get, a little more concrete? Okay, in order to do that, I must introduce you to the Denver International Airport. Fine airport. Let me just check. See how I'm doing on time. What are you doing here? Yeah, it's not too bad. It's a fine airport. I was there in Denver the whole time it was built. All of it. And it went on and on and on and on. It eventually ran over 2 years beyond the date it was to be completed. And of course the taxpayers were up in arms, and there was a lot of controversy, and they kept coming up with one excuse after another. The most amusing one was they said the baggage system was not working. We need another year, right? I'm going, what the hell? Are you trying to create an anti-grav baggage system in which the bag gets from the desk to the plane in like 2 seconds because it's on a magnetic, 200, whatever. Nah. Well, then the rumors started coming. Some rumors started to develop about this airport. Now, I'm not going to go into it in depth. A lot of stuff's come out. You can look it up. But one of the things that kind of emerged, which I'm going to talk about because it is emblematic in other ways of the deeper issues, before I do that, let me just also say a little bit more about the airport. The Denver airport is the second largest airport in the world, okay? It is 10,347 acres. The only airport larger is the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, which is by those huge cities, Dallas and Fort Worth, 10,769 acres. But what's interesting is that in terms of traffic, the Denver airport is 18th in the world, okay? You take Atlanta, Georgia, it's got almost twice as many passengers. And the Denver airport is in the middle of nowhere, next to a city of modest size. There's no other cities of any size anywhere close, right? Second largest in the world. Interesting. They must be thinking that maybe there's going to be some development somewhere along the line. Okay, fine. But with that in mind, let's go to this. If you were to walk through the Denver airport, they have put some massive murals in there. These are not small, they're very large. And they created quite a controversy. Here is one of them. This is part of one of them. As you can see, it has a macabre-looking stormtrooper with an advanced weapon. He has a scimitar, which is killing a white dove. Next to the scimitar is a couple of dead women, including a dead child with a teddy bear, and then there's a whole string of women on the outside with dead babies. Now, let's face it, folks. If you and the kids are going to Disneyland and you're going to fly out of Denver Airport, you want to see that. I mean, bring the kids. Oh, kids, look at this. This is really cool, all right? And then there's this one. This one has a phoenix bird, and behind that is like a whole forest in flames. It has a penguin in a glass case. It has dead bodies in the front, including a little child on the right in a coffin, okay? What the hell is going on here? No one puts stuff like this in an airport. Why would they do that? Well, before we get to that, let me acquaint you with something else you may not be familiar with. In 2009, a documentary was produced on the for the History Channel and aired. It hasn't aired much since, only one other time that I'm aware of. And this documentary was called The Day After Disaster, and it is about a nuclear event taking place in Washington, D.C. Hey, History Channel, let's face it. All right? Not history, it's kind of a potential history maybe, but and this is a serious doc, and it was engaging, and you'll find it quite stimulating. Unless you live in Washington, then you might find it less stimulating. But the point is that it talks about a nuclear event. A 10 kiloton would do this. And does my thing work here? Yeah, it does. Normally, you wouldn't put it there. You would put it down here so it could take out the White House, too. It virtually completely annihilates the White House, the Congress, and most of the mall, and that's in an instant. And then, of course, everything in this area is in flames, and then this is radioactive. Basically, Washington is completely toast. All right? And they ran this documentary. I watched it. It's very interesting. 2 years later, another documentary. Oh, and then you would get that. Only if it was, now you'd probably even be less than that left, frankly. And then in 2011, another documentary aired called Countdown to Zero. Now, this was a very significant documentary with a lot of people behind it, and these are the kinds of people it had in it. Heavy-duty politicals like James Baker, Tony Blair, remember him, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Jimmy Carter, former president, F.D. de Klerk, president of South Africa, Mikhail Gorbachev, Robert McNamara, Ronald Reagan, Valerie Plame Wilson, whose chief job at the CIA was arms control, and Pervez Musharraf, former head of state of Pakistan. What was it about? It was about two things. One, it was about the failure of the United States and the Soviet Union and the other countries to properly address the issue of arms reduction and elimination after the Cold War ended, after we dodged that bullet. And it explained all of the reasons why they failed here and they failed there and they haven't done the job, and it's all kind of a shell game. And then it went into a second area. And you watch this one, it's going to make you uncomfortable. They went to great lengths to point out that the idea that we have control of all the nuclear weapons and the tactical shells and the suitcase nukes and radioactive materials and the MIRV warheads and everything is an illusion. We don't. And so anything could happen at any time, which might include this. The bomb that would do this would easily fit in the back of a simple van. Not even hard. Okay? You could drive it over the southern border. You could bring it over the southern border in the back of a donkey. You could bring it into one of our ports because, you know, we have millions upon millions of these shipping containers coming in all the time, and we only inspect 2%. It's kind of like going to Vegas, you know? It's like, yeah. Put a couple dollars down, 50 to 1 odds. If you win big. If you lose, everything gets blown up. And when they aired this documentary, History Channel re-aired this one. So they ran virtually together. And then they were gone. This is called a limited hangout. This is not an effort by the United States government to inform the American people, which it's not in the business of doing, trust me. This is a limited hangout. Yeah, we said something, remember, 2011? Don't blame us. Don't blame us now. We mentioned it. You saw it, right? If you missed it, that's your problem, not our problem. Limited hangout. You're going to hear more about that. And I may run really long. We'll see what happens. Okay, some of you have probably guessed what this is. This is, of course, where all the Tasty Freeze franchises are located in the United States. Actually, this is a map of, there's not a really proper word. They're not all FEMA camps. A lot of them are. A lot of them are basically areas where people can be housed, right? Most of them involve military bases, old military bases. But let's just call them emergency camps, all right? And that is the map of them, all right? And now, these, it makes total sense. If you have an earthquake in California, if you have a major hurricane hit Louisiana, then you may have a lot of people and nowhere to go, and you need to house them until you can get them back. Apparently, they are pretty much concerned that a massive disaster is going to occur virtually anywhere in the United States here, right? It could happen anywhere. So we got to have all of these camps, called the FEMA camps. Okay. And then there's these. These are essentially air-sealed containers that are, in fact, in the business of burying people, used to put around the full crypt, right? To air seal it, no problem. Okay, so we do have these because people die in the United States. Not quite as often as in Canada, but as I said, United States. But we have a lot of them. And the interesting thing is that, They're scattered around in massive quantities out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, if you're going to have an industry that provides this kind of service or product, you'd think it would be part of warehoused or something, or next to the cemetery company. They're just kind of stuck out in the woods in giant, huge containers. What the hell is going on here? And why should you really, really be concerned? Right. Believe it or not, I am going to tie extraterrestrials into this later. Trust me, I can do it. Don't doubt me. All right. So here's the deal: the Denver airport took 2 years longer to build because next to the Denver airport, underground, is a massive facility that has been built to house the United States government. The full congressional legislative branch, which is about 15,000 people, the executive branch, and the Justice, Supreme Court, 3 fundamental branches. The workaday stuff would end up being kind of scattered around here and there, all right? But in terms of running the whole government, well, you got to have a lot of space. But wait a minute, why did they need to do that? Why did they build all? That's a lot of money, a lot of billions of bucks. What's going on? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. It's very simple. Amongst the insiders in Washington, the number one thing that keeps them up at night, they don't tell you, the paper's not going to tell you or tell us, the Americans, right? They're definitely not going to tell you. The number one threat that they are most worried about is a nuclear event in Washington, D.C. A 1, 2, 5, 10 kiloton device will be put on the mall and blow up the center of D.C. Now, that would be a problem. Okay? There's a great writer named Tom Clancy, wrote some wonderful books, very connected to the military intelligence community, knows everybody, very popular. His, I think, Piece de Resistance was a book called The Sum of All Fears. The movie involved Matt Damon, I believe. And it's essentially about a bomb that gets brought into the United States and a cigarette machine. I thought that was interesting. And it blows up Baltimore. Notice it blows up Baltimore, not the United States. That would have been pushed, Washington, that would have been pushed a little bit too far. So they blow up poor Baltimore. They blew up the Super Bowl. This is sacrilege. It's beyond disgusting. And the president escapes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why is this a problem? I'm not going to belabor this. I'm going to make it as clear as I can in as few words as I can. Since 1964 in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, the United States, for reasons that are not fully understood by the poor American people, embarked on a 51-year process in which we have created millions of mortal enemies across the world. We have killed millions of people. Men, women, children, grandmothers, grandfathers, cats, dogs, millions of them. In policies that are beyond, well, explanation, really. And the American people sanctioned it. Put up a hell of a fight during the Vietnam War, pretty much caved in on the Iraq War. We've gone worse than that. There's a saying about the Pacific War, World War II, that really always caught me. My father was in the Navy. He served at Guadalcanal, and I studied a little bit for that reason, read up and stuff. And one of the things you learn when you study the Pacific War is that of all the things that happened in the Pacific theater, the one thing that terrified the military, particularly the Navy, but the military in that war, was the kamikaze attacks. When the Japanese were simply flying their planes into our ships, guided missiles. Right? They sunk a couple hundred. And it was pretty scary. And the point that was made was that the reason that the kamikaze attacks finally stopped was not because they ran out of pilots. It was because they ran out of planes. Since 1964, accelerating in 2001, the United States has created the largest kamikaze, suicide army in all of history. Untold thousands, probably tens of thousands of individuals who, for reasons which vary, are prepared to kill themselves in order to achieve ideology, revenge, whatever the hell you want to call it. In every way you can imagine. They blow themselves up, they fly planes into things, they walk into situations, kill 40 or 50 people with rifles, knowing they'll never get out alive, and on and on and on it goes. And of course you have watched it from Canada. You have seen it. Right? Is there anybody with any common sense at all that doesn't think there is a very long list of people and organizations out there, if they can get a nuclear device in Washington, they're going to blow it up? It's without question. They're not going to blow up Toronto. Trust me, you're good. They're not going to blow up Montreal. Though Mr. Harper needs to change his policies, but that one day could become a possibility for you, but not yet. The number one target is Washington, D.C. That's why they built the backup capital. When a bomb goes off in Washington, D.C., virtually destroying our government, what's the government going to do? Are they going to go up to, like, I don't know, Rochester, New York, and say, hey, we'd like to move the capital up here now. Can we have a capital in Rochester? They're going to say, I don't think so. I don't think so. Nobody is going to accept it. But worse than that, they can't do it. They have to put it underground. They have to put it in an area that's away from everything else. It's easy to protect. They have to put it right next to an airport because thousands of people are going to be coming and going, and they have to be secure. So they got to come underground and up and into the plane and gone, and they don't even know they left, and they come back. It's the only way to go. And so they built it under the Denver airport. Now, they didn't tell the American people about it because, again, they're not in the business of telling the American people anything. And the reason they didn't tell us is because it would upset us. Right? We can't handle the truth. Remember that? We cannot handle the truth. They can, but we can't. Not to mention the fact, if they had mentioned why they had built it, I mean, if they built it, people say, why'd you do it? Well, you know, Washington is the number one target for a nuclear event, and that people say, oh my God, and property values would go down, and most of these guys own a lot of property in Washington, D.C. Can't have that. So you just wait and see how it works out. That's the way things work down there. So what is the key point that I'm making? All right? It's simply this. If that happens, and let me tell you, it could happen at any time. Please, I don't think anybody in this room doesn't think that there's no way that could happen. Nobody would do a nuclear event in Washington. No. Just look at the past history. It's been so calm, so serene, nothing unexpected happening at all. The moment it happens, millions of Americans will flee the cities. Millions, every city of size, they're gone. They're in their RVs and they are out of town. And they will move out into the open spaces and mill around. Of course, the National Guard will eventually shut off the main arteries to the cities so that at some point that will be staunched. Of course, at that point, what you have is the National Guard against a huge number of Americans, the most heavily armed people in the world, who want to leave, and they're saying, no, you can't. It's going to get a little testy, all right? And so all these people are milling around until they run out of food, and they run out of water. There's not enough Motel 6s, I'm sorry. Not for 30 or 40 million. And so the reason those are built is not to get people like me in chains. It's not to round up all the intellectuals. It's for the very pragmatic reason, if that happens, eventually they got to put these people somewhere. They're all going to die. And so they have a lot of facilities for people that are not going home until, I don't know, things settle down. But in the whole process of this, not to mention Washington, D.C., a lot of people are going to die. Therefore, you know, not enough funeral homes to handle, you know, a sudden 100,000. Plus they're dying all over the place. Right? What do? Just leave them there, like in The Walking Dead? I don't think so. You need to at least have them sealed up and buried. Have they told us about that? No. Don't want to upset the United States people. Are you starting to get the picture? But there's one more thing that you need to know. Oh, by the way, I love this. Let's see if this will be my first test of the internet. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it's not working. It's not working. I don't think, maybe it is working. This article just appeared a couple of days ago. I love this. This is fantastic. The U.S. military has decided to move back into Cheyenne Mountain and make it functional again. It's been basically not used for decades. They're going to put communications in there. They're going back into Cheyenne Mountain. They don't say why, but you're going to have another massive underground facility under a mountain for some reason that we don't know about. I find that kind of interesting, right? If you look for these kind of things, you can actually find them. They keep turning up. So what's the point? The point is this. If this does happen, be ready to deal with about 20 to 30 million American tourists who are going to be coming on up to hang out with you guys under a tourist visa, and when the visa is up, they're not going home. All right? You're going to have a bigger problem than we have. All right? And what are you going to do about that? Or what are you going to do to prevent it from happening? Let's see how I'm doing. This is turning into a marathon. I'm good. So, closing out this segment of the presentation, okay? If necessary, we will lock the doors. Okay, so you can't leave. Think of the United States ship of state as the big ship there, and Canada as the smaller ship of state to the side. Now, think of them not moored to a dock, but imagine them moored out in the open harbor with each other, which ships do, by titanium anchor chains. Given that situation, if the big ship sinks, the little ship sinks. All right? It's that simple. And you are tied to us by titanium anchor chains. And if we go down, you go down. Now, very quickly, a quick aside before we get into some interesting things. Given what you've just heard, okay, I told you I was going to make you uncomfortable. I deliver. Given what you've just heard, over the 1 million contact reports that have been submitted to researchers, let me restate that, 1 million written contactee reports submitted to researchers around the world, one of the more consistent pieces of evidence is that the contactees are taken up, some work is done, little table work, whatever they do, and then at some point they're taken into a room and they're given a visual message into the head, or sometimes it's projected for them, whatever. But these messages have a certain consistency to them, okay? They're not showing them old Charlie Chaplin movies, right? They kind of show them the same thing. And the consistent message is one, oh, by the way, these are the ETs that are dealing with the contactees. This is the 5 major types. And as you can see, these are really scary. I mean, they're just terrifying. I mean, whoa. I just don't know what to say. I'm aghast. Anyway, that's the ETs. And this is one of the messages they give them. It's one of environmental destruction of all types. And the other is war. And some of the contactees, I believe, make the mistake of thinking they're showing them the actual future. And they're going, there's going to be this and there's going to be war, blah, blah, whatever. But I don't really think that's the case. I don't think they can see the future. They're showing them where you're headed. This is where you're going. We're just going to, we needed some sperm, I needed a hybrid child, whatever they're doing. But just on the way out, just want to mention this, right? Just trying to help. All right? So it's interesting that is an established truth, and everything else I told you behind that is an established truth. You see how the two come together, and then add into that the ET engagement of the modern world explodes just 18 months after the first atomic bombs are dropped on human beings. There is no accident there, I do not believe. As a result of the atomic explosions, the doomsday clock was created by the atomic scientists, Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, many of which had worked on the bomb as the Manhattan Program. They launched it in 1947. They set it 7 minutes to midnight. And it was to draw attention to midnight on that clock, which is nuclear war. And over the years, they have moved the clock forward or backward, depending upon world circumstances, and they get a lot of press for it, to try to keep us aware of the fact that, there's still these thousands of nuclear warheads and submarines off the coast, and if somebody has a bad day, it's over for everybody. Recently, they moved the clock 3 minutes closer to midnight, about a month and a half ago. I'm sorry, 2 minutes closer. It's now 3 minutes to midnight. I won't bore you with the details. In 1999, I created another clock called the Paradigm Clock. I published it on the Paradigm Research Group website, .org website. And it was to draw attention to another midnight. All right? And I published it retroactively. I imagine that I'd published it in 1947. I set it to 7 minutes to midnight. And then if you go to the website, by the way, I need to update the whole damn thing. But you can see how the Paradigm Clock has moved further and closer or further away from midnight over the years based upon events. It's arbitrary. It's purely me. But I got a lot of press. What's midnight on that clock? Disclosure. What we're here for. Disclosure Canada. Not small d disclosure, which is going on as I flap my lips right now, but big D disclosure, all right? Big D disclosure is this. It is, and only this, the formal acknowledgement by the world's government of a non-human extraterrestrial intelligence engaging the human race. That's all it is. Nothing else. It's not the announcement that the extraterrestrials are from this planet or that planet. It's that they're here. Nothing else. And that is the policy change we want. That is the government action we must have. Now, let's see what I got here. I don't even know what I got here. Oh, there's this. Over the years that I've been doing this, 18 now, I have come to sort of a sense that I feel very strongly about. I believe that since 1947, there has been a race going on, a little contest, to see which clock strikes midnight first. That clock or this clock. Now, some people say, well, what does it matter? I mean, we could have disclosure tomorrow and still have a nuclear war. True. But based upon what I'm seeing now, if we don't have disclosure, we're really going to have a nuclear war. I think we can count on that. But if we have disclosure, we might not have a nuclear war. For a lot of reasons I spend hours talking about, but a lot of you already know the reasons. I don't have to tell you. It is a paradigm shift. It is a world-changing moment. It is a movement into another time with new equations and new rules and new understandings. It's the Copernican revolution times 1,000. And under new rules and new understandings, you come up with different decisions. You make better choices. It's the best shot that we have if you don't want those 30 million American terrorists. So, what's the title of this? Is the truth embargo in its final days? Here's why it might be. We have a shot, right? A lot of people have worked very hard to give us a shot to get it done right now, this year. The announcement, the paradigm change, right? Now you may say, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. It hasn't happened. People say, Steve, you always say disclosure is going to happen and it doesn't happen. And it's like telling the Civil Rights Movement in 1958, you're always saying they're going to get a Civil Rights Act, but we never get it. So the hell with you. Come on, please. It's activism. It's difficult. The government is putting up a hell of a fight on this, all right? We launched the petition for disclosure on September 11th of September 22nd, 2011, all right? And that petition and all the other petitions are at this website, right? Which is disclosurepetition.org. And you can go there and you can see all the petitions that have been filed and so forth, okay? And read up on that. Now, that was, not a huge thing, but it was interesting. But it got really interesting because the very first petition that we disclosed, or that we submitted to We the People, was this petition, right? We petitioned the United States, with the President of the United States, to formally acknowledge an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. And we needed to get 5,000 signatures to get that response. We got 12. We got that response. It came on November the 4th of 2011. And this is that response. It remains on the White House to this day, 4 years later. All right? By the way, since then they've raised the threshold for a response to 100,000 signatures. But you don't want to work too hard. I get it. And this response is about 8 paragraphs long, but as most of you know, it has a second paragraph, which is historical. It's a game changer. It helped lead to the next step. And this is what the White House's, the President of the United States position. The U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. In addition, there is no credible information to suggest that any evidence is being hidden from the public eye. That is the formal position of the United States. It's remarkable for 3 reasons. It is completely false. Not a word of it is true. Secondly, it's indefensibly false, meaning you couldn't defend it. Take your brightest White House person, bring him out on this stage right here, right? And we'll have a little debate. He'll defend or she'll defend that statement, and I will turn them into a Benihana shrimp entree. It wouldn't even be a challenge, so you don't defend it. It's indefensible. It's the difference between telling your wife or your husband a defensible lie, you're covered, you got backup, or an indefensible lie, in which case you got to get a lawyer. All right. And so that's the response, and it is remarkable for one other reason. It was the first time in history that the United States government had ever put its position on the issue in writing. Just a moment, let me back up, go over here. Well, the witnesses. The witnesses are the major driving force of what's going on. This you'll find at thecitizenhearing.org. Paul Hellyer was a witness. Stanton Friedman was a witness. By the way, Stanton Friedman was a witness in 2013 at the mock congressional hearing held at the National Press Club, which is an historical event. Stanton Friedman was part of the last actual congressional hearings in 1968. He stuck around all that time and closed the circle, but it won't be completely closed until Stan Friedman is in front of a congressional committee of the United States Congress. And joining this tour, Calgary and so forth, Richard Dolan and Grant Cameron were also witnesses. And so that's the website. There's a lot of material there. You can also buy the downloads of it now, which are available in high quality, et cetera, et cetera. All right, now hang on. Let me go back. It was the largest concentration of researchers and witnesses ever assembled in history. Now, once that was done, and we filmed it, began the last phase, the Congressional Hearing Initiative, which has the potential to bring us disclosure this year, by the summer. And I'm going to try to show that to you, and I hope you agree. If you don't, it's okay. You can tell me that. Most of my colleagues do not believe disclosure will ever happen. You've heard it. You've heard it a number of times. George Norrie doesn't believe it, and maybe they're right. But I think it is going to happen, right? Because I know how many people want it to happen. Now, what's this about? Okay, hang on. If you go to paradigmresearchgroup.org, the main opening page of the portal of Paradigm Research Empire, whatever, and you punch through that graphic, what you get is the full-page status area of the Congressional Hearing Initiative. You have a status report, okay? Then you have these little things, we'll get to those in a minute. And then you have a compilation of the press releases. You have a compilation of all the media coverage. You also have lectures that I'm doing on the CHI, and this is the media interviews that I've been doing. There are 50 now on the CHI, and it's just going to keep building. All right, so you can find it all there, Congressional Hearing Initiative. Okay? So, all right, what's going on here? Simple. We turned the 30-hour session into a 10 DVD box set, the whole 30 hours of witness testimony, and we shipped them on November the 5th to every single member of Congress. Every office, right? And at the same time, we launched a social media campaign from factsonwashington.org, from disclosure.media, and from the Facebook page of group, the Disclosure Lobby, which has 13,300 members right now. Please join, all right? And generated over 1 million tweets, Facebook messages, hashtag disclosure, and emails across the entire congressional spectrum, letting them know we're coming, letting them know about the DVD, all right? And now I think it's up to 1.2 million, all right? And at this site, people can find how they can get the Twitter and Facebook links to all these members of Congress and send them some neat Facebook messages and Twitter messages and say, hey, we want disclosure, look at the DVD, blah, blah, blah. And also, you can find their You can find, you got to be a U.S. citizen, but you can find their email addresses. So that's all located there, as well as suggestions on what to say and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there we go. We got that. All right, very successful. Then, okay, let's see what I got here. Okay, so that was, and I arrived in Washington on November the 20th to really get things underway, hired the publicist that came on board. She cost a lot of money, worth every penny. She started on December the 1st, and we started doing our thing, okay? Now, some interesting things have happened. The first one is this, okay? The original date to launch the Congressional Hearing Initiative was March the 31st of 2014. I had to cancel it at the very last minute. So they didn't get shipped. But someone who didn't know that had already scheduled himself to be on the Jimmy Kimmel Show on October the 2nd, 36 hours after the cancellation. He wouldn't have known it. That person was President Clinton. He, of course, picked the date, and he, of course, picked the questions. Presidents do not go on late-night talk shows and say, yeah, ask me whatever you want. Because if you do that, Monica Lewinsky makes a surprise appearance from the left wing and sits down, and you have a little chat about, you know, old times. No, no, no. So what did President Clinton have to say on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, for those of you who haven't seen it, for your viewing pleasure?
President Bill Clinton is here with us, so if I was president, and I won't be, let's be honest, the first thing I would do after putting my hand on that Bible and taking that oath to serve the country is, I wouldn't even probably finish the oath. I would run to the White House. I demand to see all the classified files on the UFOs. Because I want to know. I want to know what has been going on. Did you do that?
Sort of.
Sure.
Yeah, we had, I think it was at the beginning of my second term, we had the anniversary of Roswell.
You waited that long.
I did. Well, I did, and then there's also Area 51. You remember there was a great sci-fi movie where there was an alien kept deep under the ground in Area 51? So first I had people go look at the records on Area 51.
No.
There was no alien down there.
No.
And people thought that because everybody who works there has to stop about an hour away and put on special clothing and then drive in and out. That's because a lot of our stealth technology is made there. We know that now, but there are no aliens there. So then when the Roswell thing came up, I knew we'd get, zillions of letters. So I had all the Roswell papers reviewed.
No.
If you saw that there were aliens there, would you tell us?
Yeah.
You would?
Well, I think, look, what do we know? We know now we live in an ever-expanding universe. We know that there are billions of stars and planets literally out there, and the universe is getting bigger. We know from our fancy telescopes that just in the last 2 years, more than 20 planets have been identified outside our solar system that seem to be far enough away from their suns and dense enough that they might be able to support some form of life. So it makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
I'm trying to tell you I don't know, but if we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised. I just hope that it's not like Independence Day.
Yeah, right.
That it's a conflict.
Well, now we have friends.
Maybe the only way to unite this incredibly divided world of ours. They're out there. We better think of how all the differences among people on Earth would seem small if we felt threatened by a space invader. That's the whole theory of independence.
You're right.
Everybody gets together and makes nice, and
You and Bill O'Reilly would be hiding in a bunker together.
He'd ever mean thing he ever said about me. I don't care. Look at that.
He's something else. Now, I don't want that to rerun. I don't think it will. That is called a limited hangout or a pre-inoculation. He knew that those discs were headed to Washington. He billed himself 2 days afterwards in order to say some things that would mitigate what is coming. And I'm going to show you in a little bit what's coming. And it's pretty heavy, all right? So, That was a response to the Congressional Hearing Initiative. That I contend that if Bill wants to challenge it, I'd love to have him come forward and speak about that. Okay? So I arrived on November the 20th. We got things going, and we were setting things up all through December. All right? Then on 170 offices received verbal requests to meet in early January, right? 7 committees were approached. And then that was narrowed down in early February to just 93 members of 5 key committees. And that's where the focus has remained. Okay? Now, we had already gotten some press in the Washington Times, several articles announcing what we were doing, laying it all out. They knew we were coming, pretty much known on the Hill. All right? So we're making progress. And then on February the 3rd, but you know, it's slow going. Then on February the 13th, this happened. John Podesta, former chief of staff to Bill Clinton, advisor to Bill Clinton, head of the and founder of the Center for American Progress, right? And of course, it just finished up as a 1-year advisor to President Obama. And had just been announced, I'm going to go all the way to 6.
Your mic.
Oh, I forgot about this. But you didn't say anything, which shows how I project. I project, don't I? I can project. And then I project. So, and he has already been announced that he's going to become Hillary Clinton's chief advisor, and she is leading in the polls to be president of the United States. So naturally, when you're leaving the White House job to become the key advisor to the next heir apparent to the presidency, you want to put out a UFO post. They do it all the time, right? So he puts out this UFO tweet. Now understand, we have now been in Washington November 20 to December 20 to January 20. We've gotten articles in a number of media, which I'll show you in a bit. All right? Things are moving forward. And he makes this tweet. Finally, my biggest failure of 2014, once again, note that, not securing the disclosure, hashtag disclosure. Remember, what was the hashtag of the 1 million tweets and Facebook messages? Disclosure. He uses the same hashtag. Releasing the UFO files, and then copies the New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd, who, for many months now, has been slowly roasting Hillary Clinton over the coals. You just don't do that. It just doesn't happen unless you have to. Why did he do this? Limited hangout, pre-inoculation. He knows what's coming. He got back on the record reminding people that he had called for the release of UFO files in 2002, 2003, that he had written the foreword to Leslie Kean's book about the UFO phenomena. He'd been in the documentary about that. He'd been out there trying to do the job. Of course, he's completely tied into Clinton, so by inoculating himself, he inoculates them. This was a response to the Rockefeller Initiative. Okay? And then that generated some interviews, okay? Got some interviews right away. And one of those I'll show you in a bit was a very important interview in the Roll Call newspaper. The Roll Call newspaper, which is one of the top political newspapers in Washington that serves the Congress and the Hill and all the staff. All right, and so that gets rolling, right? When the Roll Call newspaper article comes out, I started getting the meeting requests, and I started going up in the Hill and meeting with staffers of the House and Senate side. This goes on for a week or so. And then, guess who turns up on the Jimmy Kimmel Show? March the 13th. March the 13th. Oh, wait a minute. Did I miss that? Hang on. Come on. Yeah, there we go. I love it when things work.
This is something I feel like, if I was the president, then it's unlikely that
Sound familiar?
ever going to happen. If I was the president, it was unlikely that I was going to be president. The moment I was inaugurated, my hand would just, it'd still be hot from touching the Bible, and I would immediately race to wherever they both have the files about Area 51 and UFOs, and I go through everything to find out what happened. Did you do that? That's why you will not be president. That's the first thing you would do. The aliens won't let it happen. You reveal all their secrets.
They exercise strict control over us.
Now, you know, there are a lot of people that are going to examine your facial expressions here, every twitch, everything, and say, and of course, so did you look? Did you see? Did you explore?
I can't reveal anything.
Oh, really? Because President Clinton said he did go right in, and he did check, and there was nothing.
Well, you know, that's what we're instructed to say.
That is a limited hangout. That is a pre-inoculation. He scheduled himself on the show. The shows don't call up the president and say, Mr. President, we want you in. We want you to come in on March the 13th. We've got an opening. We'd like to fill the slot. No. The president's office calls them up. We want to be on the show March the 13th. Absolutely, you're on. And then he goes on and says, I want you to ask me about this. Pre-inoculation, okay? Now, so where's this all leading? We're leading to get congressional hearings. We're making progress. We're getting there. There's no question, all right? Two of the most important congressional hearings in all of American history were, of course, the McCarthy hearings in the 50s and the Iran-Contra hearings in the 80s. There have been many others, watched by millions of people. Let me be clear, if we get hearings for the witnesses, the military agency political witnesses before the House Intelligence or Science and Space Committee, they will be the most watched hearings in all of history. Untold, hundreds of millions of people will watch those hearings. And of course, the truth embargo will be over. It's that simple, right? And one of the reasons, there are two fundamental things that are driving the discussions on the Hill that I am having. It's the raw meat that I'm putting in front of them, in front of a Congress that is now controlled by the Republican Party, meaning all the committee chairs are Republican members. And it is the Rockefeller Initiative. I shall be brief. All right, but here it is. In 1993, Rockefeller tried to get Clinton to release all the UFO files. The effort went on for 3 years. Hillary Clinton knew all about it. Bill Clinton knew all about it. John Gibbons was the head of the OSTP where the discussions were held. John Podesta knew all about it. Webster Hubbell knew all about it. And of course, the principals, Rockefeller, his lawyer Henry Diamond, C.B. Scott Jones, his right-hand man and the head of the Human Potential Foundation, and journalist Richard Farley knew about it, as well as a bunch of researchers that were involved and actually met with Rockefeller at his ranch in Wyoming. And of course, Al Gore knew about it, Bill Richardson knew about it, and Leon Panetta knew about it. Because Leon Panetta was the chief of staff during the Rockefeller Initiative. Richardson was a close friend of the Clintons and became the Secretary of Energy. Al Gore was his, brother-in-arms vice president, very, very tightly held. And John Podesta was a key advisor at that time, became chief of staff in the second term. Webster Hubbell was the associate attorney general, who, because Clinton asked about the UFOs over at Justice and contacted a couple of other agencies, and they immediately indicted him and put him in jail. And of course, Hillary Clinton was, of course, the first lady. All right? We actually have, and have been up for 12 years, two documents from a FOIA request submitted by Grant Cameron, which confirm that Hillary Clinton was directly involved. Lawrence would like to discuss these items by telephone, perhaps on Thursday, up here. Wait a minute, let me get up here. A draft letter to the president, which Lawrence has been discussing with Mrs. Clinton and her staff, a draft report on the best evidence about UFOs. And then, hang on, we have another document. Grant Cameron got these in 2000, by the way. I made a copy of all in the year 2000. There was 1,000 documents. I made a copy, 2 sets, and submitted one to the Washington Post and one to USA Today. And they did absolutely nothing. Okay, so we have this document here, which in the bottom paragraph says, or the second to the bottom paragraph, it says, you indicated that you will keep the First Lady's office informed, and we shall as well. Lawrence Rockefeller. This has been out there for a long time. In the 23 years, since the 2 years since the Rockefeller Initiative began, none of the people that I have mentioned, none of them have ever uttered a single word about it, didn't acknowledge it exists, and have never been asked a single question by the media, ever, about it. Which is why they've gotten away with it for 22 years, even though it's been on the net for about 12 years, okay? Well, basically about, 9 years ago, hang on a second, I jumped back, let me go back here. Okay, got to get there one more time. 9 years ago, I put all the key documents right up on the web. They're right there. You can go look at them all in chronological order. And guess what? People are starting to do that because it's coming into national news very soon. The fundamental evidence for a 3-year effort to get Clinton to release all the files that nobody wants to acknowledge at a time, exactly the same time, that Hillary Clinton is about to announce her candidacy for the presidency this Sunday on Twitter, and while she's under a major scandal regarding what? Mendacity, openness, transparentness. I couldn't have designed this better if I'd tried. It's perfect, okay? There is a God in heaven. I am converting to Christianity today because somebody clearly has made this come together. By the way, we're going to go all the way to 6, so if you have a wedding to attend, you're going to have to make some plans. All right, now here we go. So that's the Rockefeller Initiative, folks. It is a very big deal. And the other area that I am pushing very hard is, and this, by the way, there's 3 hours of testimony in the DVD set that's in the congressional offices about the Rockefeller Initiative, naming all the names, Clinton, Podesta, Panetta, and so forth, in the Congressional Hill right now, all right? The other area is nuclear weapons tampering. The rather inconvenient truth that since 1967, the ETs are continuously coming down and turning our nuclear weapons off. Those dirty rascals. Right? And it drives us crazy. And we turn them back on, and then they come down later, and a couple of years to turn them off again. This has been going on for some time. Your government's told you about this, haven't they? Oh, maybe not. Okay, well, this is sort of a very sexy version of how that happens, but I kind of like it. If you want to know about this, there are 2 books you read. One is UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings and Fated Giant by Robert Salas, one of the many Air Force witnesses ready to testify before Congress tomorrow. Air Force captains with national security clearances, first-hand testimony to craft coming down and turning off our nuclear missiles. I think that's news. I think that's kind of news. I think it's national security. What do you think? All right? So those are the 2 books. Point I'd like to make. Robert Hastings, with no disrespect to all of my colleagues and other researchers, as regard disclosure process and what's going on right now, the 2 most important researchers in the world are Robert Hastings and Grant Cameron. Because Grant Cameron is the one that did the FOIA that got all the documents on the Rockefeller Initiative and then set up the presidentialufo.com website, which has huge amount of material about all the presidents and a whole lot of material about Clinton and the Rockefeller Initiative. It's been up there for years. His work is absolutely critical to this. And the other thing I'm pushing on the Hill, we're moving along pretty good now, is that we're not the only nation in the world. And that if we keep kicking the can down the road, Vladimir is going to tell the people the truth about the ETs. He's going to be the disclosure president. And if he balks, Xi Jinping of China will be the disclosure president. And if you are, an American politician, if you're the president of the United States, I assure you, the last thing you ever want to do is to walk out in the East Room of the White House and say to the American people, I really didn't want to tell you this. It's kind of been awkward, a little uncomfortable, but Vladimir, damn him to hell, has spilled the beans and told the world there's an ET, ETs are here, and so there's ETs here. You don't want to be that president. It will be a geopolitical catastrophe for the United States, and any catastrophe for the United States is a problem for you. It's good, probably best that we do it. But there's another possibility. What happened to that slide? I lost it. I forgot to bring it up. No problem. So, where is this heading? The slide has a big picture of a gentleman by the name of Harper, who was a prime minister of some country. He could do it. Okay? So that's not going to happen. Okay, now, where is all this heading? It's simple, right? You drive the press, you have the meetings, you get them to start making statements like you've just seen, and eventually you hit a critical mass, and the media bites down. It's the media that will bring us disclosure. These are what we call political media, all right? At some point, they've had enough, and they jump into this story. And instead of just writing up stuff, they're starting to ask Podesta questions, and Hillary questions, and Bill questions, and Obama questions, and Panetta questions, and Richardson questions, and Al Gore, bless his heart, questions. And what are they going to say? We got 1,000 pages of documents, prove it all, right? Well, guess what happened? In the media situation, which I'm going to cover very quickly, right? The first we had several important articles in the the Washington Times, but the first really good one, all right, occurs in Roll Call. Warren Rojas. Huge article in Roll Call. All right? This is it. That's their article in Roll Call magazine that's seen by everybody on the Hill. It includes interviews with some of the committee members, former members of Congress at the citizen hearing on disclosure. It's got copies of letters I had faxed up to Capitol Hill. That one you see there has a full paragraph on the Rockefeller Initiative, naming all the names. It's got the link to the video of, you don't see it here, but the Kimmel Show. And it has right here, for the first time that I am aware of, let me see if I can find it, it is a link, oh, where'd it go? Hang on. I'll find it. I think it's linked. I know it's here. There is a link to the Rockefeller Initiative right there. Can you see it? You click on that and it goes to the page I just showed you. The first link that I am aware of, because only one story was ever written about the Rockefeller Initiative, 1995, the New York Daily News. That went to all the Capitol Hill people with a link to the Rockefeller Initiative. The whole thing is starting to come out. It was after this article, right, that I started to get the calls from the offices to come in to meet. And then the next article that was particularly important, it's the high point so far, hang on, was this one. This just came out. It's in what is considered to be the most progressive magazine in the U.S. It's called Mother Jones. And this extensive article appeared in Mother Jones on April the 3rd, right? Now, you know Hillary just loved to see that, you know? Oh, let me tell you, her people were thrilled about that, okay? And he gets into it all. He names all the names. He talks about the Rockefeller Initiative. It goes on, it goes on, it goes on, it goes on, it goes on. He's got the Podesta tweet in there, right? Her soon-to-be advisor. Rockefeller Initiative is in there. Got another link to it. Mother Jones is a pretty well-followed magazine in the United States by the left, let me tell you. And he is the first reporter in 22 years to ask a question about it to the Clinton empire, Clinton team. And he got a response. He got it from Clinton's spokesman named Nick Merrill. He finishes the article with that. Here's what the Clinton team had to say. Asked for clarification of Hillary Clinton's stance on UFO disclosure, a spokesman for her office responded by email, "Our non-campaign has a strict policy of not commenting on extraterrestrial activity." Mistake. Okay? He's going to eat those words. But that's the best they could come up with right now. We have them in a corner. She's running out of room. She now is going to announce as president. Once you announce as president, everything can go back on the table. We didn't get it quite out in 2008. It's coming out now. And the moment those questions are asked, the truth embargo's days are numbered. Or we get to congressional hearings, and the truth embargo could be over. All right? And when the media bites down, that's what you get. When they finally decide enough is enough, that's what you get. And so if you're the press spokesman for the White House, or the Pentagon, or the CIA, or the NSA, or the State Department, and that one person goes out in front of the microphone with 150 reporters to ask them the questions, that's what they're going to see. You don't lie to that. You don't say, we don't comment on extraterrestrials to that. You tell the truth, or they will eat you alive. Bill Clinton found that out when the blue dress. By the way, in this article, I'm not going to just point it out, but in that article I just showed you from Mother Jones, bless his heart, he actually refers to the Rockefeller Initiative, using a quote that I gave him, that the Rockefeller Initiative is the exopolitical blue dress. I have nothing against the Clintons. They're pretty okay. They're all right. This is not a vendetta, right? This is not a vendetta. But let me tell you, the heat is on, all right? So, before I finish, I'm almost done. I'm actually not going to make it to 6. That's good. You may have a chance to ask a couple questions. I have a request. All right. The citizen hearing on disclosure would not have happened unless it got funded. I originally launched the citizen hearing on disclosure idea in 2001, and I put up a website and I tried to raise money. The budget was $300,000. That was 2001. 12 years went by. I couldn't raise any money. Could never fund it. But in 2012, the funding came in. $1 million. And that $1 million made it possible to put that citizen hearing on, which ended up costing $750,000. Okay. The rest got spent on other stuff. Films we were trying to put together and so forth. And that $1 million did not come from an American. It came from a citizen of the exceptional nation of Canada. Why? Right? It's not a complicated answer. Canadians are less paranoid about their government. They're less intimidated by their government. All right? They haven't been subjected to the truth embargo and the massive propaganda effort to the extent the United States citizens have. And they don't live in the United States. And so it was a very progressive, advanced thinking individual who had probably is totally given about $2 million to the whole extraterrestrial presence issue and advocacy. And he's done. He's done. He's given all he's going to give. And he's done his share. Without him, there is no citizen hearing on disclosure, and there is no congressional hearing on initiative, and we are no closer at all to finally ending this. Well, look, in order for this congressional hearing initiative to succeed, not sort of succeed or maybe succeed, in order to make sure it has everything it needs, I need one more Canadian. All right? But not $1 million. I need at least $25,000 to make sure we're covered for the next 2 months or even 3. More importantly, PRG has already committed that it will pay all of the expenses of all of the witnesses that come to testify in Washington. You see, the Congress doesn't pay for those. They either pay for themselves or an organization pays for it. And PRG is going to pay for it, right? It'll pay their travel and their food and their lodging and their spouse, because you're not going to ask a witness to come to Washington to the most important hearings in the history of the human race and leave their spouse at home to watch on TV. Not going to happen. That's going to cost at least $50,000. So we're hoping to get one more Canadian who has the means, because they have worked hard in life, and has the wisdom to understand that this is our chance to get this done. Don't have time to get small donations from lots of people over the next, not that we don't turn them down, but for the next year or so. No, we got to get it done now. The window is open now. I need one more Canadian. It's not right. I should be getting it from Americans. But they are scared shitless down there. Have you noticed the police have been militarized? You know kind of what's going on? It's getting a little crazy. Not that they're intimidating witnesses or they're bothering me, but they have enough of a hypnotic trance over them that it's like, I'm Steven Spielberg. I've made a couple of billion off the ET issue, but I don't want to rock the boat. I could go person after person. So I need one more Canadian. We'll see what happens. How will disclosure happen? Here's the way it'll happen. If hearings are acknowledged or actually conducted and the press starts to bite down, the United States President and the Pentagon will have to do what they have had to do for several decades now, since the military intelligence complex pulled the entire issue out from under the executive and the entire Congress. I trust you. Intelligence Committee, President, you don't get briefed on jack. By the way, what Clinton said about Area 51, Roswell, not true, right? No. And it didn't happen in his second term. It happened in his first term, and it was the Rockefeller Initiative, which he couldn't dare name. They love to dance. They're great dancers. But the dancing is going to stop pretty soon. The deal will be simple. The Pentagon will want from the President, what are you going to do about this? How are you going to conduct it? How is the post-disclosure world going to go? We have national security concerns. Are you going to work with us? And the President will say yes, or his representative. Yes, we'll work with you. We'll be responsible. The President will say, and you're going to back me up, right? You're going to provide me some nice government evidence I can show. And when they come to the Pentagon to ask about it, you won't say, ETs? What ETs? No, you will back the President up. And once that deal is struck, the President can go in front of the American people. That is what we're seeking. The press will deliver it. We're going to get the press involved. They will make that deal, and they will announce it. And at that point, we cross over, finally, from the pre-disclosure world. That's the bleak black part over here, you see. That's where we are now. That's where Syria and Libya and ISIS and Iran and Iraq and the new Cold War with Russia and the destroyed environment, right? And, 2 billion people living in misery. That's where they are. And we get to move into this. This is the nice world with the big galaxy in it, very colorful, very nice. That's the post-disclosure world. All we have to do is get through that line. This line is disclosure. And until we get it, that line might as well be a 10-foot brick steel wall. But once it's down forever. Who is committed to that? Who is prepared to get the truth now? Not when the government feels like giving it to you. Not the truth that the government wants to screw around with. The real truth with the media behind you. Who wants it now? Not in 10 years, not in 20 years, not after the next nuclear war. This is activism. This is realpolitik. I'm done. Questions? We have a little time for questions.
Want to do a question?
Oh, absolutely. We got some time.
Let's get some questions up here. Come on up to the front. Let's do it. Whoever's up here first. Let's go. We've got time for a few. Sir, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett.
Good job.
Finally in person, not just on videos. Excellent.
Love you too. And then he swaps the mic back and forth.
So my question is pretty straightforward. It's probably yes or no, but maybe you can fill it in. When the congressional hearings happen, on disclosure, will all of the witnesses who have sworn oaths of secrecy be automatically absolved of their responsibility to hold those?
Right. The issue of amnesty has been around for a long time. In fact, when Rockefeller approached the Clinton administration in March of 1993, he wanted two things. He wanted all the files released, and he wanted amnesty for any witnesses that came forward. Obviously, those things did not happen. Can we get amnesty now? We cannot. There is no way to get any kind of amnesty for witnesses on the ET issue, because as you may recall, according to the White House, there are no ETs at all. Why would you get amnesty for someone to come forward to talk about something that doesn't exist? And if they did it, it would raise, of course, the press, and it would all end. So there can be no amnesty. However, so when those witnesses go before the Congress, they don't have that kind of protection. But understand, they've already been out there. They're not being harassed. Some of them are no longer under security oaths. Most of them are well retired. Nobody's going to go up there that's probably really concerned, and believe me, given the tens, hundreds of millions of people watching that hearing, the idea that they're going to indict one of those witnesses the next day, it's not going to happen. All right, so they're okay. Having said that, I promise you that within days after the disclosure announcement, PRG will put out a statement asking that immediately consideration be made for an amnesty program and a truth and reconciliation program. These are not the same thing. Truth and reconciliation would be a program in which those who committed crimes in service to the truth embargo throughout those years, if they come forward and say what happened in full detail, they will be accepted back. They will be reconciled. That's truth and reconciliation. It works. I actually have a good friend who knows Desmond Tutu, and I will try to get him involved. Amnesty is different. Amnesty is for anyone who has information, right? They didn't commit any crimes. They got information. They'd like to come forward and add it to the picture, but they don't want to be criminalized. We will move for both of those programs, and if the people get behind it, we'll get them. Next.
Thanks very much. Two questions. I'm not sure if you know anything about this, but April of last year, USS Donald Cook in the Black Sea was disabled, and the story that flew around was that a Russian plane with some sort of technology was able to completely disable it. So I was wondering if you...
Yeah.
And the other one is probably a lot more ominous, is the upcoming Jade Helm military exercise that's been planned for July, no less.
Where?
It's in 8 states.
It's going on right now, yeah.
Texas and Utah are identified as enemy or
Yes.
hostile.
Okay, with respect to the issue in the Black Sea, I don't have corroboration of this. All right, but it's important because we know the ETs are capable of turning off electronic devices. They can turn your car off, right? you all saw, right, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? They turn off your truck. And of course we have the pilots that had their planes turned off when they're about to launch their missiles. But then the planes turn back on. In other words, the ETs can shut the electronics down and then it can come back on. Now the kind of technology we have, we can shut electronics down, but usually it ain't gonna come back on, right? So they have this ability. Did that happen in the Black Sea? I don't know. But because the ETs can do it, it's worth consideration. With respect to the exercise that are going on, you know, yeah, brother. You know, we got like 400 cable channels down there, and people are pretty entertained, and we've been lulled into a sense of, I don't know. Well, first of all, we've been hypnotized with propaganda. So much stuff is happening, and American people are confused. They don't know where to go, left or right. They don't know who to elect. They're just kind of milling around, and meanwhile, the government is just closing in. Okay, I'm not happy about this. I don't like what I'm seeing, but understand, throughout the 10,000 years of history, nations have come and gone. Empires have come and collapsed. The United States is not immune from this, and you don't want it to collapse. So, yeah, guess what? If the nuclear event is the #1 concern of Washington insiders as they, you know, decide whether they want to stay for another year in Washington, and that event occurs, you think they're going to need a whole lot of relatively well-trained National Guards and other people to try to keep order in mass chaos? You betcha. But you think they can tell you why? Why they have those liners? Why they built that underground Capitol? No, because then they'd have to acknowledge certain things, and the American people basically cannot handle any truth. And the great irony of that is when you look at the political leaders, the people in the United States that can't handle the truth is them. Not us. We can handle it. They can't, right? We need them to tell us the truth. We'll take it from there. It's the irony of the whole thing. They think they're so special, simply by the fact they have money or they were elected, that they can handle these hard truths, but the people can't. And so what's happening, trust in government in the United States is collapsing. The approval rating of the Congress is currently 13%, which I remind every staffer that I meet. Next question.
Hi, sir. My name is Gerald McLaughlin. I want to thank you for what you've done in the last 18 years. My world was rocked when I was 12 years old. I saw two craft. I saw two craft fly over my head when I was 12.
Yeah.
Totally expanded my mind. Everyone talks about secret societies, the Masons, the Illuminati, the hidden hand controlling us. Jay Widener calls them the Archons. Just your opinion on, you know, I'm looking 15 years down the road with my business, 15 years of retirement. I can't look 80 years down the road, 150, 200 years down the road, but this hidden hand can. What do you think it is? Are they large-brained hominids? Do they have resurrection technology, solar and intelligence technology, time travel, any combination of that? Last quick question. How will these slides in Mexico City on May 5th?
Okay.
What do you think? Thank you.
If disclosure triggers, I hope, the greatest age of institutional reform in human history. The greatest because of the mass communications we have, the internet and everything else, so that you have, you know, there has been reforms in the past. You get a bunch of serfs out in the field, they're not even educated, and somebody makes a reform over at the castle. No, I'm talking about reforms in which hundreds of millions of people are participating in because they got iPhones and internet and all that stuff. Greatest age of reform, one of the things that is going to have to be reformed is secret societies. They have to go. Okay. They have to go. Okay. Now, there's all kinds of them, and we understand why they were there, because if you didn't do stuff in secret, you know, 1,000 years ago, the king would come and kill you. I mean, we get that. There's a place for it in a way, and private citizenry is important. But the use of secret societies in order to influence power and get stuff for yourself, that's got to go. So how will that happen? It'll be slow, but it'll be mostly peer pressure. It'll come a point where if you're in a secret society and anybody knows it, they're going to go, you know, get away from me. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's you. And people go, oh, what? Now, one of the great moments in terms of secret societies happened in a presentation, two presentations that occurred back to back, 2 nights in a row on the Larry King Show. This was the election between John Kerry and George W. Bush. And because of a book by Alexander Robbins, which you need to read, called Skull and Bones, The Fleshing Out Skull and Bones, fantastic lady, go read that book. Anyway, it sort of got out there that George W. Bush was Skull and Bones, as was his father. Now, of course, the press never gets into this. They don't talk about it at all. But in this case, because of the book, they asked George a kind of a question about it, and George gave him a funny little response, what, secret or whatever, you don't talk about that. Yeah, it's laugh, 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 and it's done. Well, I knew he was Skull and Bones. No big deal. So was his father. I know that. The whole organization is designed to do nothing but elevate each other into power. They hold rituals in their mausoleum on the Yale campus where they all get naked and they sit around in circles and they tell each other their deepest, darkest secrets. Why? So they all have stuff on each other, so later on, nobody screws with you, okay? A wonderful concept. The very next night, they brought the other candidate on, John Kerry. And it was when I learned that day, I didn't know. He was also Skull and Bones. And they asked him a question about Skull and Bones, and he said this funny little answer, about, we can't talk about that, and they moved on. And I realized that in this pretty important election, 2004, George Bush was in deep trouble. The Iraq War was, of course, on its way to becoming what many consider the biggest mistake in the history of the United States. We had two Skull and Bones men running against each other. Post-disclosure, for God's sakes, one of the first things I'll be looking for is for the Yale campus to kick those idiots the hell off of their property and let them run their mausoleum somewhere else. Another question? Okay.
I just want to let you know as well that Modern Knowledge is conducting a live stream event with Michael Tessarian from Belfast, Ireland. He's one of the preeminent researchers on secret societies, the Illuminati and whatnot. He's got some very, very interesting points to add. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more and backing up what Stephen just said, check that out May 2nd.
Oh yeah,
Mexico City. Do that.
Yeah, that's kind of tricky. Look, I know Jaime Maussan, I know Tom Carey. There's another fellow involved named Lawrence Freeberg who did Live Aid, and they're making a big thing out of it. They're going to have contactees come in, known musicians that come back and talk about their contact experiences. And there's going to be 2 slides. Look, it's a show. It's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a lot of people watching. It's going to raise awareness. It's going to be kind of fun, and a huge number of Mexicans are going to watch it on Televisa or Univision. And that's okay. But understand, there are no smoking guns. There isn't like, I got a piece of metal from the Roswell crash, or here's 2 slides, and that, oh my God, that's it. There is no such thing as a smoking gun. The impact of this evidence will be quite modest, all right? And they will do their best to demonstrate that there's some validity to this, and there may very well be. That's cool. It's okay. No problem. They're making it kind of a show, but hey, Steven Spielberg, he puts on movies about extraterrestrials that make $600 million, right? I could like to have a little of that, but nevertheless, I don't denigrate that he does that. And of course, Spielberg's movies have done as much as anybody in the world to raise awareness of this issue. So it's all part of that. All right? But people are getting a little worked up thinking, this is it. They're going to see the actual, that's it. And then the whole disclosure is going to happen. No, that's not the way it works. It comes from working with the press, working with the Congress, working with the government people and so forth to finally get the policy changed. But I'll be watching, or certainly looking forward to see what happens. Anything else? Stanton, yeah, that's it.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you, I haven't really heard this mentioned very often, or during this lecture. Dr. Stephen Greer, he's been involved in disclosure. And I was wondering if you can tell me what he is working on right now and your views.
Stephen Greer has been involved in this since late 1980s, longer than I have. I entered in 1996. He put on one of the most important things he ever did was the May 9th, 2001 press conference, which was held in the ballroom of the National Press Club, where he brought in 18 witnesses to speak for a few minutes to about 100 media that were there. It was a big press conference. I was there. And then they produced a videotape of 75 witnesses. Okay, this was in May 9th, 2001. It was that event that solidified in my mind the idea of a mock congressional hearing. Not 18 witnesses giving a few minutes of statements in front of the press over a 2-hour period, but 30, 40, 50 witnesses testifying before former members of Congress over many days. But that was a significant event, and it would have had a lot more impact if 9/11 had not taken place just 4 months later. This is the problem that we have. One of the reasons I'm in a hurry to get disclosure is because the next 911 is just down the road. And when it happens, everything gets shoved off, right? You can't get to anybody. We're in crisis mode, all right? And believe me, there are bigger 911 stuff out there. We've already talked about it, much bigger. And if you recall the response of the American government to losing 2 very big buildings that were outdated, a hole in the Pentagon, and about 3,500 people. The response was to destroy 6 nations, kill about 2 million people, create 6 million refugees, huge amounts of infrastructure gone, and create a morass in the Middle East that may never be solved in our lifetime, barring a major event like disclosure. What do you think the response of the American government will be if somebody explodes a kiloton bomb on the Mall of Washington? You want to measure that? And you think I'm going to be able to get into the Capitol Hill offices to talk about disclosure then? We can't wait any longer. We got a window. Let's get it done before somebody does something stupid. Greer has made major contributions. He's been involved in the alternative energy issue. He is one of the leading, one of the absolute leaders in contact 5 level, CE5 level activity. There are now groups all over the world. Most of them are not known. They're private that are doing CE5 work. They're going out. They try to bring craft in and initiate some kind of contact. I've spoken in front of some of these groups. There's a lot more than you think. This is a developing thing. It's being done quietly. He helped launch that, all right? So he has clearly established his historical position on this issue.
Thank you, Stephen. Fantastic.
Well done.
And ladies and gentlemen, I just really want to thank you for all of your time spending today coming out to support this event. If you took any photos or videos, please feel free to put them all over the web, YouTube, Facebook, whatever you want. The only thing I would ask is please give credit to this event and also to the speakers. Pass along the information, put links in the videos. It's always good to put the information out with the research links so that people can become more educated. And on behalf of myself, Chris, and Modern Knowledge, thank you so much, Toronto. You've been awesome. Can I have Kevin Magellan to the stage, please? As you're grabbing your jackets, just got a word here from Kevin. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, miigwech. Oh, miigwech, Bajo. I just wanted to round us up in a good way that this is nothing new to us. And being Native American, we've been through terror on Earth, and we have a lot of history with Star people and with one another. So I'm just really honored to have been part of this and to open this up. And as we come back together as one mind and one heart and go out to the streets and digest and ingest all of this, that it's a celebration time. And look into prophecies, look into your roots and who you are in the Tree of Life. And this Modern Knowledge Tour is the Tree of Life to bring that sacred fruit back into our lives. And that, you know, when we eat, we are what we eat. So it's a blessing. So I want to bless all yous. And as we walk into this beautiful life, that this is a blessing for the universe and the globe to come together as family once again. So it's very exciting. So let's not feed the fear, but be aware. And that's the beauty of it. So miigwech, thank you guys. Miigwech.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you.
Oh, I did. I loved it.
Are you going to come back in August? Yeah, meeting Nassim and Alex.
It's the Holiday Inn.
No, get a nice one.
I'm going to go to the Radisson on the
Pamper
lake.
yourself. Yeah, that's how you do it.
Disclosure Canada, what are your thoughts?
Fabulous. Thank you.
What are your thoughts?
Very informative. I'm glad that we could talk about this stuff.
Absolutely amazing. Looking forward to seeing it again.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Disclosure Canada, what are your thoughts?
Amazing. Great time. Very informative. It's great to see a lot of people out here for this type of event, and this type of event come to Toronto. It's very rare to see something like this in Toronto. Often it's just in California or New York, so it's awesome. Hopefully it comes back again.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. What are your thoughts?
Fantastic. Absolutely. Blown away. Yeah. Well worth it. Yeah. Absolutely. Great.
What are your thoughts?
Succinct and outstandingly relevant. I've been knowing about this material for a lot longer, 40, 50 years now, and it's about time that the truth does come out fully.
Yeah. Okay. Disclosure Canada. What are your thoughts?
I think I have a lot of thoughts. Everybody's working towards disclosure, but what happens when disclosure gets here? Well, nobody really talks about what's going to happen afterwards once everything's wide open. I mean, what happens with world religions? There's going to be like a lot of pissed off people on the planet when they find out that this information has been kept away from them all these years, all these generations, and people are going to wonder, why did we go to all these wars for in the past, and why did we go to all these churches and temples in the past? Where does religion stand in all this once disclosure is here? Like, no one's really talking about, okay, when disclosure gets here, then what? This is a lot to think about there, That's what I'm worried about.
Do you think if the governments and media do not disclose aliens are real, and that the aliens will disclose themselves to the world?
Absolutely. I think they're doing that already with all the sightings and the contactees coming out with their stories of their eyewitness accounts and abduction stories and experiences. It's going to happen sooner or later anyways, but I'm just worried about what happens when it becomes official, when the governments of the world tell the people of the world that we are not alone and disclosure is finally here. A lot of different people are going to react in a lot of different ways. Not all are going to be happy about this being out in the open. A lot of people are going to be really upset, and there's going to be some problems to deal with afterwards, I think.
Do you think we will see alien disclosure within our lifetime?
I think we'll see it within 5 years. Honestly, I do.
That was great. We had lots of homework to do now after watching these great people. Had a great day. We're not alone. Keep looking up. Thank you.
Nice.